Are the Jazz lucky or good? Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles, the Jazz essentially sat out their core. Donovan Mitchell's hurt with the ankle. They sat Gobert, Conley, and Derrick Favors, and they paid a price. They got beat pretty handily at the end of this game. Now it's close back and forth. At the end, the Lakers pulled away. Cantavius Caldwell-Pope got the job done. But what did the Jazz really lose here? Yeah, they lost a game, but the Suns got embarrassed against the Spurs, and now the Jazz find themselves 1.5 games up, Jake. Are the Jazz lucky or are they good?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that on one hand, you probably took a calculated risk sitting all those guys. You probably said to yourself that, the Suns were probably going to lose that game, against the Spurs. And so you felt like this was a good opportunity to sit your guys that you felt like needed a rest. Now, in my personal opinion, I don't feel like Rudy Gobert needs a lot of nights off because I don't feel like he is a explosive player who gets a lot of who takes a lot of beating on his body. It's not like he's playing above the rim and his joints are getting killed every night. Like he's not like Donovan, So the Gobert thing is interesting. I think that the fact that, the Conley situation, we all know who he is. We all know what to expect. We're not surprised that he was sitting out. And then Favors is just an older player who does definitely need the rest. So I don't know. I think overall, are they lucky or are they good? Yeah, they're good enough. Frankly, they're good enough to take these risks because they're in first place, they're on top of the hill, and they're looking down at everybody else. And that's a huge luxury to have. At the same time, the lucky side of this conversation is that the Suns lost that game. Because if they lose that game, we're having a completely different conversation about the fact that, hey, you rested a bunch of guys that you really shouldn't be resting all at the same time. So I would tell you they're both, but I think they've earned the right to take these kind of risks.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that on a couple of different occasions, the Jazz have gotten really lucky here. There's almost no reason that this Western Conference race isn't tied. If you look at what the Suns did in beating the Jazz, that's a huge win for them. But then they turn right around and go drop a dud in L.A. while the Jazz get a character-building win against the Blazers at home. So they get that game right back. Now you look at this situation where the Jazz rest their starters for whatever reason. And by the way, I'm a little surprised the NBA hasn't taken action against the Jazz because they find the Raptors and they find the Spurs for resting their starters healthy guys. They rested multiple healthy players. You're not allowed to do that on the road. And the Jazz did exactly that in Los Angeles on Saturday afternoon, resting core players. Donovan doesn't count because he's clearly got an injury. Rudy Gobert could have played, Conley could have played, and Favors could have played. Yeah. Yet they sit them all out, and the league does nothing. The Spurs sit out DeRozan and a couple other guys. They get fined $25K for that. I'm a little surprised the NBA didn't take action there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny, like when you look around the different sports leagues and how they apply fines and the different rules, and how they enforce the different rules. The NBA is very much a case-to-case thing. Like like the rule clearly says you're not supposed to be resting multiple healthy players on the road. It's very clear. It's a very black and white rule. It's not confusing. There's no nuance in it. It's very straightforward. So the Jazz clearly violate this rule, and they don't get fined for it. So, I don't know what the NBA looks at or how they kind of go about it. There's been so many instances where, I can think back to when LeBron was a Miami Heat and they had that team together and they sat LeBron, D Wade, and Chris Bosh against a Spurs team that was going to contend with them to get to the NBA Finals. So, I don't know, man. I again, the lucky portion, yeah, you're lucky to have not been fined, 100%. Does an NBA organization give a damn about a $50,000 fine? Probably not. Honestly, probably not.
No, I would guess not, but my point is, I think there's a couple of things working here. I am more and more evolving into Shaq and Charles Barkley's opinion that I just don't think the Phoneix Suns are ready to win. It is inexcusable for the Suns to lose that game to the Spurs. Inexcusable. And to get blown out, it simply cannot happen. And what it tells you is all of this experience or lack thereof that we consistently hear about from the Suns is actually spot on. You can talk about Chris Paul all you want, but when your best player, who is Devin Booker, has zero playoff experience or big game experience, I mean, you're seeing that in that performance against the Spurs. And Book played well. He's been red hot lately. But this team just isn't ready to win at a high level. That's what really stands out to me about the Suns. And, you know, whether they're lucky or good or I don't know, I think the Utah Jazz are in an excellent position here. They avoid a huge injury with Donovan Mitchell. That's absolutely the best news they could have gotten is an ankle sprain, because that was either knee or calf or whatever it was. That was ugly. But they avoid a major injury with Don. I think you're in LA tonight. I would guess that Favors, Conley, and Gobert are all going to play, and they should coast to a win against the Lakers, who are not going to have Anthony Davis back tonight and probably won't have him back for at least another week, it looks like. The Jazz are in a good position. I agree with trying to get your guys rest. They need to now, in my opinion, reestablish that swagger. And maybe you can't do that with Don in this ankle. I don't know. But at some point, this team's going to have to get back to hitting a ton of threes and demoralizing other teams. And it's really encouraging to see Bogdanovic, Bogey, starting to hit those threes again.
Yeah.
I just wish he would stop passing on them.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of times where he definitely passes on them. There's no question. I think we've seen him be more willing to just pull the trigger on some of the more contested shots, which is something that he wasn't doing before. And I think that Bogdanovic is definitely improving. He's definitely going the direction you want him to go. But I think the fact is that, you know, you look at every playoff contender and they've had injuries. And so I think this is a real good test for the Jazz to see what they can do without their best player. Because what do we always talk about on this show? At the end of games, where do we go? Donovan Mitchell and everybody else. And so my question is, with Donovan Mitchell being out with this ankle, do we start to get back to, you know, ball movement? Do we start to get back to being intentional with getting the open looks for, you know, Bogdanovic and for Jingles and for these shooters that you have on your team? Because I think that is where the opportunity is for this team to get, you know, as you were saying, their swagger back. They need to get away from being so stagnant with the ball and just playing pick and roll with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and they need to get to moving the ball to get wide open looks. Because you notice when they get those wide open looks, they're going to knock those shots down. And I think that for them is really what's going to make the difference in the postseason. If they play that stagnant, you know, two-man game, they're not going to make a deep playoff run. If they're moving the ball and getting the wide open looks, they will make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, and my guess is that they're going to move the ball a lot. And I am really confident in a couple of things. I think the Clippers are becoming one of the best teams in the NBA right now. I think the Utah Jazz have to get back to that, because over the last several weeks, the Clippers are the best team I've seen in the Western Conference. Obviously, the Jamal Murray injury is a huge blow to Denver. The Lakers without AD and LeBron, they're just not a very good basketball team, at least not one that's going to compete at the top of the Western Conference, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, I think that there are a lot of issues with the way that the Jazz are playing basketball right now. And I think when I look at the Laker game the other day, I mean, Jordan Clarkson, I don't know where I am with Jordan Clarkson. Like, I want to believe in Jordan. I think he's a great sixth man. But I think there is an exposure that happens when he gets into 25, 30 minutes game. That's not who that guy is. I don't know where the tipping point is, but he's another one of those guys who you want to see get back to being his best, what we saw in January and February.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see him start coming into games and giving them, you know, 20, 25 a night. I mean, that's when he was at his best. That's what he was doing. I mean, he's put up 40 for this team before. I mean, that's happened, which tells me that on a consistent basis, he's more than capable of giving you 25 off the bench. I mean, that's not outlandish. That's not a stretch. That's as he is that good as a scorer. And I think that that, again, I'm just looking forward to, because we're at a point in the season now where we're looking at the postseason now. We don't really give a damn about the rest of these games. Like, yes, they're going to win them. Yes, like it's basically a foregone conclusion. At this point that they're pretty much going to be the 1 seed. The only way that doesn't happen is if they really drop the ball and just play awful basketball to finish the season. But assuming that they're the 1 seed, I look at a postseason matchup and I say to myself, in the postseason, you're playing half-court basketball. You're not going to get this run and gun transition 3-ball stuff that you live on.
That's
and so
right.
with Jordan Clarkson, my question is just going to be, if he's not going to get the transition 3, I know I keep saying this, they're going to have to move the ball a lot in the postseason to get good looks for these guys. And I'm just curious, like, what that adjustment looks like, because it's not easy going from transition to we're going to play a dominant half-court brand of basketball and move it all over the place. I mean, that's 2 completely different styles. So I'm really curious how that works out.
Well, and I think one of the other storylines for the Jazz certainly is Ersan Ilyasova and the contribution he made Saturday as a starting 5. I think it warrants more minutes. Obviously, going 6 of 8 from 3, scoring 20 points before he fouled out late in the game. I mean, Ersan can shoot the 3. And I think what he showed you is he deserves more rotational minutes at the 4 and the 5 than he's been getting. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the real wins for the Utah Jazz out of that situation against the Lakers. I also think it was interesting that Royce O'Neal played a much larger role, because I just don't think that can happen on the regular. Mm-hmm. Again, he shot 2 of 10 from 3. I'm curious how they try to work him back in, because I actually think Royce O'Neal needs to hit threes for them to win. He is the guy that a lot of teams will leave open in the corner, and he hasn't been knocking that down, and I think it's hurt them. But again, I look at the way they played, and they largely went with the 5 guys that they started.
Yep.
And, I mean, you saw, obviously, hey, the minivan. Is that not the stupidest nickname you have ever heard for somebody? Obviously, Niang played 22 minutes. I thought Morgan actually played pretty well.
Yeah.
For not being a guy that's used to playing those kind of minutes. But this team is who they are. They're clearly not out trying to find additions. Mm-hmm. They're clearly not out at this moment trying to bolster this roster. Mm-hmm. This is who their guys are.
Yeah, I thought your best point there was the Ersan thing. I think that Ersan showing you that he can make those shots playing the 5, that's going to be huge for them.
Yes.
And I want to be really clear. Ersan Ilyasova is not in any way, shape, or form pushing Rudy Gobert because he made all those shots. The person he's pushing is Derrick Favors, because the thing that nobody's talking about with Ilyasova's contribution is that he actually played really solid defense against Andre Drummond when he was on him. Yes, there were a couple fouls, but overall he made Drummond's life difficult. And I think the biggest difference between Favors and Ilyasova is that they both have the quickness to stay with Drummond, but the difference is in that game, Drummond had to respect Ersan's 3, which opened up the paint. And I think that if Ersan can continue, he's not going to go 5 of 5 or 6 from 6 every night. Nobody does. Right. But I think that if again, projecting forward to a postseason series, when you want to try and make like 23, 24, 25 threes in a game, Ersan's 2, 3, and 4 threes a game are going to make a difference. That's 10, 12 extra points that you can get out of a bench player. That's huge.
Yeah, and I think that they'll have to figure that out, and this is the main question for the Suns. It's the main question certainly for the Lakers and the Clippers. Like, who's that number 1 off the bench? And the answer is I don't know at this point. And I look at some of the teams that, you look at what's DeMarcus Cousins got left in the tank at this point.
Yeah, not a lot.
You look at what's out there to add. It's Austin Rivers. Maybe there isn't that guy, but this is why. And I don't mean to keep going backward, but this is why I thought they needed to make a pretty significant addition at the deadline, because you look at teams like Phoenix, and as lacking in experience as Phoenix is right now, I still think the Suns provide a significant challenge to the Jazz in a 7-game series. Mm-hmm. And I can't say with all assurity right now that the Utah Jazz win that series.
Yeah, well, I think the thing with the Suns is that they're really well coached. So Monty Williams has come in, and yes, as much as they're a young team who's still learning how to win, they're a very well coached team. So like they're not making the dumb plays. When they're bad, they just don't show up. They don't execute on offense. They don't do the little things within their offense to score a bunch of points.
Yeah.
That's when they're bad. But the good news is that they've gotten away from just the careless turnover, the dumb foul, not being where you should be on defense. Like, they've gotten away from those silly mistakes. And I think that what we learned out of that Jazz Phoenix game is that the Suns are a very disciplined team, especially when they play big games. And I think that part of the issue in that Spurs game was that they said, "Oh, well, it's the Spurs. I mean, we're gonna light them up," and that you can never do that.
Yeah. James says, "Thanks you guys for keeping me entertained on my drive to work. I've turned off the radio and turned on YouTube." Well, we appreciate that.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you.
James says, "We are definitely we to the Jazz."
I like it.
James says, "We are definitely good. The lucky thing is a bit insulting, in my opinion." I don't mean it to be insulting. I think it just keeps it real. I mean, if you look at, there's no excuse for the Suns to have lost that game to the Spurs.
Mm-hmm.
No, like, there is none.
None.
When you lost in Phoenix and then the Suns got to go on the road to play the Clippers, you go home to play the Blazers, and you get a quality win over the Blazers. Okay, that's good. You are good, period. You get torched by the Lakers, and then inexplicably the Suns get blown out by the Spurs, who aren't playing any of their best players, and the Suns are playing everybody. Like, there's no way to explain that other than, my God, the Jazz got lucky right there.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think I know for a fact we're having a very different conversation if the Suns would have taken care of their business. And so the only reason, I think the only reason the lucky thing comes in is not to say that, again, I'm not going to sit here and say that the Jazz are lucky to be in the position that they're in. I mean, they've played a lot of tough games. The NBA season is really long. It's a marathon. Everybody knows that. And like I said earlier, they've earned the right to get lucky in some of these situations because they've worked their ass off to get into the number one seed. But I'm not going to step away from the idea that, yes, they are, if you want to use the word lucky, fortunate, that the Suns lost that game. That is a huge deal that they lost that game. We're having a different conversation if they would have taken care of business.
Mr. Mitch says, "I guess since Barry blocked you, I'll step in and be the negative." By the way, a lot of people saw that meltdown from Barry on Twitter the other day. I don't know what what was that about? Was that the gun violence thing the other day?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know. Barry's quite volatile.
He'll be back.
Barry lost his mind the other day and blocked me on Twitter. Like, he hasn't commented since like Wednesday or Thursday.
He'll be back.
Listen, hey, I appreciate everybody who watches and follows the show. We're going to talk about I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Barry gets upset about so many things that I can't remember.
Barry's a New Yorker, man. It's all good. It's
who
cool.
now lives in Florida. And hey, more power to him. He's got that incredible hot girlfriend. I think they live in Orlando or Tampa. Hey, knock yourself out, Barry. I hope you do listen. I hope you do come back. Mr. Mitch says, any comment on your Cubs? No comment whatsoever. Achilles Jean-Pierre says, not a Jazz fan. I don't think the Jazz are lucky, but fortunate. Okay.
That's what I said. Lucky, fortunate, whatever you want to call it. Man.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just they like the lucky thing is Donovan Mitchell not breaking his ankle on that roll because he could have easily broken his ankle doing that.
How bad? That's one of those injuries that looked horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, this is not one of those where he was like cutting and rolled his ankle. I mean, he's coming down on his ankle,
full body weight,
and that's just really lucky and fortunate that he didn't break his ankle, man.
How about your boy and his ankle the other night? Mm-hmm. Steph Curry again.
Yeah.
Bro, will you put on some high tops, please?
No.
I mean,
he wears those ankle braces, but he's always had weak ankles. He's known for it. It's a thing. He's had to deal with it. Like, he just has had weak ankles.
Yeah, he always had it rough. He had weak ankles. Mm-hmm. That's why he's an accountant.
Do you even live?
No, he does not. Forgotten Soul says today better not be another 3:00 Mountain Time game. Yeah, what the heck, dude? Like, why are we playing in the middle of the day on a Friday?
No idea, dude.
Can somebody explain that to me? I like that. That was bizarre. Gabe Ledley says, "Morning, boys. Did I miss the Mastros story time?" No, you haven't missed a Mastros story time
yet.
Mastros was amazing.
Old reliable.
Mastros was. By the way, we got to talk about Fogo de Chao.
No, this is going to piss people off.
Yeah, we also went to. We'll talk about it later in the show. We also went to Fogo de Chao. We'll talk about that. Should have gone to Lowry as the prime rib. Should have done it. Where were we? Oh, Jazz. Anyway, who's the best team in the Western Conference? I feel like we talk about this daily. Right now, I would have to say it's the LA Clippers.
I mean, right here today, it's the Clippers, but I think again, like, it goes without saying that I just can't express how important it is and how awesome a position it is to be in when you're in the number one slot, because you can look down on everybody else and you can say, okay, this game is not a must-win game for us, but then this game in 3 days is definitely a must-win, and then you can cater your performance around that. And so, yeah, I think it's huge.
Tyler wants to know how slurping went this weekend, and he says another diss of the Jazz. I don't get it. How are we dissing the Jazz
Yeah, we're
at
not
all?
dissing. See, and I knew this was going to upset people when we brought up the lucky or good thing, because people are automatically going right to, oh, well, you guys are saying that they're lucky to be in the 1 seed. No, that's not what I'm saying.
No.
We never said that. I just spent 5 minutes talking about how they've worked their ass off. They have every right to be in the position that they're in.
Yeah.
The lucky portion specifically pertains to the Donovan Mitchell injury. That could have been a gazillion times worse. So we could be talking about the Jazz going into the postseason with Donovan Mitchell being out the rest of the year. We were millimeters away from that happening, to be clear. So that I do say is luck, because that could have been a lot worse, and the Jazz have no control over that. So that's luck. I then look at the Suns losing that game, and I say, hey, that's a team that beat you. That they showed you their quality. You had your best, they had their best, and they beat you.
How do you explain the Suns right now? Like, I just DeAndre Ayton, and I know that you people are tired of hearing me say this, and my guy Mike in Phoenix, I apologize ahead of time, because Mike is a huge players program. Oh man, I don't think I told you about this. Mike wore me out on Twitter last week about my tweeting with Sean Miller's son. So Sean Miller, the former head coach at Arizona, gets fired. And his son came out like in defense and talked about how, Sean Miller was the most, a successful and decorated coach at Arizona. It's like, bro, maybe you heard of Lute Olson. Maybe, oh, no, you probably haven't because you don't care. And I tweeted back at Sean Miller's son, and I said, something to the effect of, it's never good when your dad has more FBI wiretaps than national championships. And a bunch of people got into me over it, but Mike was like, yeah, not cool, bro. You attacked his kid. I didn't attack his kid. I did not attack his kid. What I said is absolutely true. That Sean Miller's a fraud who literally, and it's inarguable, he got caught on more FBI wiretaps than he ever did winning national championships because he won no national championships.
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? That's my point. Mm-hmm. I mean, that guy wrecked more shirts with his, acidic sweat than he did win that. Okay, I'll stop. Look, man, some people just have overactive sweat glands.
Uh-huh.
It's nothing you got to bring up.
Yeah.
Anyway, DeAndre Ayton's soft.
Mm-hmm.
And I just go back to good old Ron Sapocek.
Here we go.
Varsity basketball coach for the Round Lake Panther Pride, who always used to say to us, if you can catch the basketball on this team, you can play. I can put you on the floor. All you have to do is catch the ball. DeAndre Ayton can't catch the ball. He cannot catch the ball in traffic. He cannot catch bad passes. He can catch lobs and dunk them, and he does that well.
Anybody can.
But if you throw him a pass in traffic, and credit to Rudy Gobert, because Rudy's gotten much better at this, DeAndre Ayton cannot catch a ball in traffic. And if you watch how many times he either does not pay attention to where the ball is, which means, hey, I'm running free down the lane, but I don't realize it, so I'm not looking for the ball. The other night, he got hit in the head with a great pass.
How is that even possible?
Because he's not looking for the ball, right? And so I think DeAndre is part of the problem there. I think Chris Paul, they are really load managing. Chris Paul, they're managing Chris's loads. That came out wrong. You want to? You want to? They are resting. They are resting Chris Paul a lot, and I think that that drop off is significant when Chris is not on the floor. Mm-hmm. They were never in that game against the Spurs.
No,
They just never showed up.
I think that we've talked about the Devin Booker superstar thing, and we've been trying to figure out for a long time, what is this thing that he needs to do? Like, what is it going to take for Book to take the next step? And I think when I see games like this out of his team, because like it or hate it, that is Devin Booker's team,
Yes.
not Chris Paul's team. That is Devin Booker's team. It has been, and it will be until he leaves. This is one of those games where the best of the best in the NBA do not allow their team to do what they did on that evening. And I think that to me, after I saw that, I was like, man, like a superstar would not allow that to happen. I mean, that's just not good enough out of your team. You would take that upon yourself and say, hey, even if I put up 30, we got embarrassed. That's unacceptable.
Okay, we need to ban any reference to slurping now. Maybe Will says maybe you should slurp Devin instead of KD, and he would play better.
Hey, I don't know what you guys want me to say to that.
Stop it. Stop it.
Is slurping not one of the best words in the English language?
Moist is better.
Dude.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong?